Hey y'all, what's up? My name is Shelby. Welcome back to Seeds to Garden. Today we're just going to take you down to the garden with us and show you some of the stuff we've been planting. We're getting those garden beds filled and we're going to put the layer of compost that we have on the top of the old beds. We're going to plant some onions, some Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cabbage, beets. We're getting lots of it in the ground today, so let's get started. We already planted our Brussels sprouts and our onions. We have them in both beds back here. We also have planted our potatoes. That's what you see in the buckets. We have red Pontiacs and russets. So the next thing that we're working on is amending these back beds. So we're going to be putting all of our new fresh compost down, and we're going to be adding in the rest of our onions, as well as we're going to be amending these next two beds, and that'll be our broccoli and the rest of our onions. So we have yellow sweet onions, Walla Walla onions, and some scallions to plant. So what we're actually doing is we are scooping the compost out of the compost bins, and then we're taking a sifter and we're sifting through all of the big pieces of stick or rock or things of that nature that we don't want to fill our garden beds with. And then you get left with this really nice powdery compost that's very light and aerated and fluffy. And then we're going to be pulling back all of the straw that we were using to overwinter the beds. And when we're doing that, we're also weeding out what's in here. And then we just spread over this really nice compost that's super light and fluffy and aerated and super dark. Really nice. So very excited to get this compost in here. This is our first year being able to use our own compost, and it looks like it's really rich in nutrients. You can see it in the dark color there. So I think the plants are really going to enjoy this, and it's a nice top coat to be able to put on your garden beds just to kind of amend them for this coming year. We don't like to do a lot of tilling with our garden beds because that just promotes more weed growth, and it also disturbs the natural element layers of the soil. So just topping off your garden beds with some really rich nutrient compost or some kind of manure or mushroom soil, topsoil, all those things are really great soil amendments. You can also buy individual fertilizers to add to it, but we like to try and keep it as natural as possible. So we did put down this layer of compost. I'm interested to see how far it goes. So we had 2 bins, if you remember, of compost, and there was probably at least 2 or 3 feet in the bottom of this really nice compost. So we have some left to do the rest of it. Pretty decent amount that we have to sift through, and then whatever gets sifted out, we're just putting back into our new compost bin, which I think I showed you, but it's this new cattle panel circular compost bin. Gives it a lot more air, a lot easier for us to kind of move it around and flip it. So that's where all the waste of the sifted material is going. And then we can just continue to do the breakdown process with the compost. So we're not permaculture experts, but I feel like we are making headway into giving back to the soil what we're using and what we're spending. So we'll keep you guys kind of updated on our composting process. Okay, so we're going to be planting some scallions in this back garden bed, and this is the first year that I'll be growing scallions. I'm obviously no expert, but I'm going to plant them and assume that they're the same as regular onions. And so basically what you want to do when you open these up, so ours are actually already starting to sprout, so it makes it really obvious, but basically when you plant these, you want to plant them with the butt side down, because if you plant them upside down, they're going to either have to grow very odd to be able to pop out of the soil, or you're not going to get them to grow and they're going to rot off and die. Same with regular onion starts. So these are Walla Walla onions. You'll see, so I can get the camera to focus, that there is a butt end to these as well, and then they have a green shoot. So you want to make sure you plant them in that way. It's a little more obvious with these guys, but if these hadn't sprouted like this one here, it's hard to know what side is up. So you want to make sure you're putting the old root system down into the ground. So it looks like I have 14 scallions and a good handful of Walla Wallas yet. So the Walla Wallas I am going to be planting with the broccoli. We have the yellow sweet with the Brussels sprouts. So I'm going to plant the Walla Wallas with the broccoli. So I'll show you those in just a minute. But over in this garden bed, this is kind of our overstock. Whatever it doesn't fit in with the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts are going to go into this bed. And this is actually the first year that I'll be planting onions in with broccoli and Brussels sprouts, and that is to try to deter the potato bug issue we've been having. So I did get some neem oil. I'm going to spray that on, but neem oil is not an actual pesticide. It's more of a deterrent, and it is all organic, so you do have to apply it frequently. Usually it's every 7 to 14 days, and it's more of, like I said, a deterrent. So it keeps them from even coming into the bed rather than treating what's already there. We do have a current potato bug infestation problem in some of these older beds that we've put potatoes in. So for this year, we're putting the potatoes in a totally different bed. We pre-sprayed it with the neem oil. We're going to do that throughout the year. And then the beds that we've had potatoes in, like this back bed and the bed that the Brussels sprouts and the broccoli are going in, those are going to be added with onions because that is a deterrent for potato bugs naturally. That's one thing we're trying to do to rotate our crop and make sure that we're not getting one heavily sowed bed of pest problem. So we'll see how it works out this year, and I'll kind of keep you posted. Let's get these scallions in the ground, and like I said, all I'm going to do with these scallions specifically, so I want to put them more in the front because I'm going to have scallions and then onions as well as celery. And then on the back bed with the trellises, we're going to be doing the American yard-long and the zucchini rampanades. So I want to try and do things that are short to tall, so that way I'm not reaching over tall things to get to short things. And I also don't want them to blockade the sun from those specific smaller plants. So we're going to put the onions in the front, and then the celery, and then the vining plants in the back. So I'm just going to space them out probably about 4 inches apart. And it depends on what kind of onions you have to know how big of a spacing that you need. So for yellow sweet onions that are a lot smaller, I could probably do 2 or 3 inches. For the Walla Wallas, you definitely want to do 4 or 5 because they bulb up so big. For the scallions, I'm doing a 4-inch, not because of how big the scallion is itself, but you can use the greens and they get pretty bushy. So that's why they're going to be behind those other onions as well. So I planted those, and we're going to get the rest of the Walla Wallas planted with the broccoli. So for my broccoli bed, I actually have 2 different types of broccoli. I have baby broccoli and I have Waltham broccoli. So the baby artwork broccoli is basically broccolinis, so they're not like going to head up completely. They're actually going to have little offshoots. So those are a little bit smaller of a plant than the Walthams. They actually get really big and bushy, and then they have 1 head of broccoli. And once you harvest that, you're pretty much done with that plant. So I'm going to try and do this strategically so that my baby broccolis that are going to be around all year can have a little more space than the head broccolis, because they're only going to be up until we harvest those. So I'm going to do the spacing a little differently with those and make sure that we have enough space for the plants that'll be out for most of the summer. Okay, so it looks like I have 8 baby broccolis and I have 12 of the Waltham broccolis. So these beds are going to be a little bit more heavily sowed than what I had originally anticipated. So I do think I'm going to end up planting a lot of my extra onions in the back bed. I am still going to put some in this bed, but it's not going to be as many as I had anticipated, simply because the Walla Wallas are a lot bigger of an onion, so they need more space. So that's okay, we'll just put more extra on the back bed. So let's get these guys spaced out. Okay, so we figured out that we're gonna put 5 Walthams and 4 baby broccolis in each bed. We have 2 beds for that. So we're actually gonna put the baby broccoli at the end and then the Walthams towards the front, because we're gonna have some cucumbers on this trellis. And once the cucumbers get mature, it's gonna start shading these other plants. So we'd rather put the plants that are gonna be essentially removed when they're harvested towards that side, so that the other plants that are going to continue to produce will be able to get better sunshine. And then the plan is to just interput some beets in here. Beets and broccoli are really great companion plants. So we're just going to kind of stick them in between some of these plants. We're not going to do a ton. This is our first year planting beets, so we're just going to throw them in here so that they can A, get some companion, and B, we just get to kind of experiment with some beets. So that's what we're going to put in now. So when you plant plants, you want to squeeze the bottom of the container and just gently tip them. You don't want to ever pull them directly from the stem. You can actually dislodge the plant. So you just kind of tip them over. You want to tease out the roots on the bottom just to kind of loosen them up. And then I just make a hole. Make sure that the soil is kind of loose underneath it. And then plop them in. You want to make sure the only plant that you should ever be burying up the stem is a tomato plant, and that's because tomato plants will actually create roots from their stem. The rest of the plants don't do that. So if you do that, if you cover the entire stem of that plant, you actually risk creating a rot, and then your plants will actually die. So you don't want to ever cover the entire stem of the plant. You just want to go right to that soil baseline that you have. And that's it. And I just kind of give them a nice squish to make sure that they're nice and comfortable and tucked in. And since we're filling in with beets, we are going to want to plant the more larger plants first so that we can establish what their boundaries are, and then fill in as needed from there. It would be a lot harder to plant seeds and then try and remember where you planted them and stick other plants in. You risk kind of planting on top of each other. If you are new to gardening and new to your plants of kind of how they grow, I would recommend just leaving your markers in with them so that you know exactly which plants are which. For me, I've been planting long enough, I kind of know how the plants will react. So I don't really necessarily need to do that. I also keep a garden plan to know what plants I planted where. But because I do have 2 different varieties in here, I know that these 4 plants are baby broccoli, but I don't know where the Walthams start. So I will probably leave the stick in here for the Walthams so that I know that that's where it starts, and then the rest for the right are Walthams. So that's just a trick that you can do. It doesn't hurt to leave the markers in, but a lot of times they don't stay. And you just want to be gentle with your plants. If you're a little aggressive, you risk breaking them. So So just remember they're in a sort of a fragile state at this point. And you never want to plant seedlings outside that you haven't hardened off. So make sure that you're hardening them off, usually at least 1 or 2 weeks, at various temperatures during the day and through extended periods of time throughout the day. And I'm making sure to lift up all of their leaves as well, because you don't want to get any of the leaves underneath the soil. That'll cause them to rot as well. Okay, so everything's planted broccoli-wise in this bed. So I'm just gonna fill in with the beets and plant the other bed of broccoli, and we'll check back. Hey y'all, so editing Shelby here. I just realized in this video that I never did really sign off or show you the final result. I did, however, take some pictures, so that's what I'm going to show you here. In the first few pictures, you're going to see the broccoli beds that we just planted together, fully finished, but I'm also going to include some photos of some of the other plantings that I did not record. So I finished planting the rest of the onions in the back bed that did not fit in the Brussels sprout bed. These are the Brussels sprout beds fully planted with their onions. These are our potato beds that I talked about earlier in the video. We have both russets and red Pontiacs. And finally, just some pictures of us filling the last few beds with the remaining compost that we had, as well as the new beds that are waiting to be filled. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please continue to like and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more content, and we'll see you in the next video.